Welcome everybody to our Aotearoa New Zealand Lunch and Learn series in partnership with Te O Aotearoa Volunteering New Zealand. My name is Kelsey, and with this series we intend to support you with all of the amazing mahi that you do by inviting along thought leaders in the volunteering space to have insightful kōrero over your lunch break. I am very excited today to welcome Sudha Bhana along, Manager of Volunteering at Cancer Society Auckland-Northland. Sudha brings over 18 years of leadership across New Zealand and Singapore's non-profit sectors, and she leads hundreds of volunteers across Auckland-Northland region and is a passionate advocate for innovation, inclusion, and the future of volunteering nationwide. So welcome, Sudha. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, kia ora, Kelsey. Thank you for having me.
When we first connected about having you on a session, we discussed how we could do things a little bit differently and sort of really pushed for something different than a traditional Lunch and Learn series. And that's where we came up with this idea of a collaborative session, because 2026 is obviously the year of the volunteer, and National Volunteer Week is approaching in June. So we thought it could be a really great chance for us to facilitate something a little bit more collaborative around volunteer recognition. So today is obviously not your typical webinar, it's a shared conversation, and we will be asking if you can contribute ideas throughout the session that we can all chat about, and hopefully the goal is that by the end of the session we want you all to walk away with at least one new idea or approach to recognising volunteers in a more meaningful way. So on that, a little bit of housekeeping of how you can get involved. We will be asking questions throughout, but also if you've just got something you want to contribute, please don't hold back. We'd love to hear it all. If you're comfortable with sharing your voice, please click the hand icon at the bottom, which will allow you to raise your hand. And I've got the lovely Tatiana from our team moderating here, and she'll give you the capability to then unmute and activate your microphone. And the same way, if you're happy to be on camera, then just turn your camera on at the same time too. Once you're finished though, please turn off both of these just to keep everything nice and smooth. Alternatively, as I mentioned, if you're feeling a little bit more shy, please just drop anything you'd like to contribute into the question box at the top right hand for Sudha and I to read. But first of all, I'd love for you all to scan this QR code and let us know how you're feeling currently about your recognition strategy. It's all anonymous. It's just a bunch of emojis, really. I'll give you a little glimpse into what it looks like. I've had one response so far. So it's just going to come up like this here, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But please do, let me go back so you can scan the QR code and let us know. While you do that, just quickly before we kick things off, as I always do, a really quick introduction to Rosterfy if you don't know who we are already. We've been around for over 9 years now, and we're used by over 5 million volunteers and staff globally. We've recently ticked over 150 million hours of volunteering across 35 different countries, and we're all about connecting communities to events and causes that they are most passionate about. Here are some of the different organisations that we support. And then also we have a lot in the global event space as well. But we're running out of time, so let's kick into it. So what are a couple of things that your team are doing right now at Cancer Society when it comes to volunteer recognition?
Oh, thanks, Kelsey. Yeah, sure. Here the team and I are constantly looking for innovation. So while we're really conscious of our donor dollar and balancing that up with the volunteers that give their time to our free services that we provide. A couple of things for Ivy, International Volunteer Year, that we've introduced is a special acknowledgement email signature banner acknowledging the Ivy, and we're also working on a history series honouring our volunteers who are the founders of the society. So each newsletter that we have, the quarterly, there's a really piece there to honour them, because we wouldn't be here without them. And one of the other things that we've been trialling is a quick online quiz for our volunteer drivers, and they went into a draw, and the first 30 would win a Cancer Society windscreen sunshade. So and some snail mail anniversary cards going out there as well.
Yeah, it's amazing how much even just a little personalised card can really resonate with some of those volunteers that have been around for a long time. Can you think of anything that you've done that just didn't go well, that just didn't land previously, that you have learned from?
Absolutely. I think we all have those. I wouldn't say it doesn't
Absolutely.
work. It doesn't work, but we feel that our volunteer inboxes are influxed with information. I think everyone would agree. We get a whole lot of surveys and information and constant mass stuff. So we feel that
Hmm.
mass acknowledgement email isn't as effective and doesn't work to get that personal recognition.
Yeah, absolutely. And how about, do you think there's any sort of emerging trends coming through that you're starting to take notice of in the space?
Yeah, we are. I think just like all of us probably on the webinar, we've got the discerning volunteer, I call it now. So, like all of us, they're mindful of sustainability as organizations, and so very careful about choosing options, even if they're acknowledgement gifts, to make sure things are environment friendly, and knowing that one size doesn't fit all
Yeah.
for their volunteers. Yeah.
Yeah, and that maybe comes into sort of our first question that I'm going to throw out to the audience that's joined around, if budget and time weren't restraints for you, what would you do when it comes to volunteer recognition? And I think what you just mentioned there around the personalization piece is probably going to be quite a theme, because I think if we all had the opportunity to, we'd love to go as personalized as possible and offer a bunch of different types of rewards for different types of volunteers. But it can get really hard when you're obviously in a space that people are very limited on time and resources to be able to go that deep on it. Yeah, if anyone has any other thoughts, please raise your hand and we can either let you chat or drop it in the chat as well. But any thoughts from you on this one, Sudha?
Yeah, definitely. I think every charity has budget restraints. And so sometimes I think that's when I was talking about the innovation that comes in. Sometimes it can be the smallest things that don't have to cost a lot. And so,
Yeah,
we will often do like a little SMS to a particular group, looking at that cost and making sure that that's viable. And that little personal message comes through in a text, which is far
yeah,
more valid, or a phone call, that
yeah,
kind of thing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had Janine drop in the comment section here as well that definitely personalization's one for them, but difficult to make that appear equitable, which is, yeah, as you mentioned, there's ways around some of that with using like low cost options. But of course, if that wasn't a restraint, we'd all love to go big and sing about our volunteers from the rooftops and do whatever we could for them. But there is always those restraints in there at the moment, especially when you're working with a system or with maybe historic systems that don't also enable you to get all the data that you need to actually approach volunteers in the way that they would like, or even have that knowledge around it either. Also, I thought what I might do is just quickly flash up these Slido results. So in terms of how we're feeling about volunteer recognition right now, the score is sitting at around about 3.4 out of 5, which isn't too bad. We've got 46% sitting in the maybe good but not great. Then we've got kind of average at 46%, and then we've got feeling a little bit below average, 8% there too. Awesome. But heading back to here and around what's meaningful for volunteers, we asked some volunteers in our community what felt meaningful for them throughout their experiences of volunteering. And here are some of the responses we received. So the first one is having a really great on-the-ground coordinator that remembered me by name when I came back again. It felt more authentic and genuine rather than a generic thank you email. The next is a personal touch of a handshake and a personal message saying thank you. Your contribution helped us with X, Y, and Z. That's been plenty. A bit of a critique here. I went out as part of a corporate group, but they didn't capture my details personally in order to send a thank you or a follow-up. I wanted to help more, but because they didn't know who I was, they weren't able to say thank you properly or ask me if I personally would like to engage with them again, which I would have if they had asked. I love being able to see how many hours I've done with an organization. I find this very motivating to be able to see my impact, and allows me to work towards personal goals, like 100 hours of volunteering in a year. I very much resonate with that one. I volunteer with Lifeline in Australia and previously with New Zealand, and I love looking at my hours going up. It feels very rewarding to me knowing that I'm really contributing a good amount of my time to something bigger than me. Being told the outcome of what I contributed to later on meant a lot. Like, because of your help, we were able to support 50 families this week. It made it feel real and not just like I showed up for a shift. When an organisation remembered small details about me, like my job, studies, or why I started volunteering, and referenced it later, and opportunities to grow or be trusted with more responsibility. Love all of those. Awesome. And so from this feedback, I think what we can see that the most meaningful recognition isn't always about how much that you do, but it's about how personal it feels. And one way to think about that is through these 3 levels. So at the identity level, you're speaking to who someone is. And this is where recognition becomes really powerful, because it reinforces their sense of belonging and purpose. So you're the reason you volunteers stay. You are one of our most trusted mentors, are some examples of that. And then at the behaviour level, you're calling out specific actions. And this is what actually drives repeat engagement, because people know exactly what is valued. And then at the impact level, you're connecting to their contribution to a real outcome. And this is where you can create that emotional memory, that feel-good feeling that stays with people. And it brings them back as well. Examples here: because of you, 42 people in crisis weren't alone. Or that family still talks about what you did for them. And so I think the magic really happens when you combine all 3 of these, when someone feels seen for who they are, recognized for what they've done, and understands the difference that they've made. Any thoughts on these ones, Sudha?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think knowing your volunteers is really important. And I think they're just, like all of us, have different personalities, needs, wants, belonging, reasons why they're with our cause. So yeah, trying to get to know our volunteers is really important.
Yeah, I think that's a huge reason a lot of our organizations go with Rosterfy, because I think having access to that level of data and being able to even enable your local admins or your team leaders on the ground at some location that you have to know who's coming in, to maybe know a little bit about that volunteer and why they're there, and then you're equipping them with the power to actually make that volunteer feel really special. And without having that access to data and information, it can be really hard to obviously keep a record, but then make that volunteer feel like their contribution is known and really valued too. Awesome. This is maybe a couple of examples. If we use like the end of year thanks as one of them. So rather than going out with an email, thanks everyone for your hard work this year, I think you sort of touched on this before, sort of that kind of generic email going out, to something like, Kelsey, you completed 27 shifts, you mentored 3 new volunteers, and your onboarding improvements reduced the drop-off by 18%. The team specifically called out your empathy during peak season. I think that's a really great way of sort of that retention, advocacy, and culture piece in there too. Awesome. So here's a little bit about what we're seeing across some of our sectors at Rosterfy. So obviously we've got a lot of different types of organizations that use us, but specifically some trends across these 3 pillars. So, and they're all quite different. Universities and colleges are an interesting one. So we have a function in Rosterfy where volunteers can actually earn points for different hours that they volunteer with us. And then organizations are able to have a shop front where they can load up maybe different things that have been donated to them. Maybe it's merch, maybe it's the wind shades that you said before, the personalized ones there, Sudha, or maybe it's Uber Eats vouchers or whatever it might be. And students are able to earn points and then unlock rewards, which is a important one for, I suppose, that younger demographic as well, really feeling like they're still getting something out of their volunteering experience that supports them too. So that's a trend we're very much seeing across universities and colleges. Aged care is a new one that's coming through for us as well. Particularly in Australia, we're seeing this with, there's been a big Aged Care Reform Act come through with a lot of compliance. But with aged care, we find that a lot of the volunteers there, things like the personalised certificates and maybe badges that get awarded to them when they reach certain milestones, making them feel really appreciated, even for 10 hours of volunteering or 20 hours of volunteering or 100 hours of volunteering. Being able to see that in a centralized place has been a really impactful one for that sector. And then obviously non-for-profit spans far and wide, and you might be able to talk to this a little bit more, Sudha, as well. But something that continuously comes up is having data which tells you whether your volunteers are also donors. Because I think that's quite a critical piece, is understanding the people that are giving their time, maybe they're also giving their money as well. And so understanding that when you're going out to comms with them, like, not only did you give 15 hours of your time last month, but we know that you also donated $250, and we're so appreciative of your ongoing support. And that level of personalization and that level of data is really important too. And I can see that Janine has said in here, recognize volunteers for their strengths and acknowledge to the group that everybody contributes different strengths to the whole team. Absolutely. And I think keeping a record of that in that personalization way, and then enabling your whole team to have access to that information, so that volunteer feels like, wow, I'm really, everyone on the team knows who I am and they know why I'm here. And that makes me feel really empowered and I want to come back. Anything to add to that, Sudha?
Yeah, I was just picking up on your point around donors and volunteers, and we did some great work around that, and the percentage of volunteers that are donors, and also the percentage of volunteers that are also in the future going to offer a bequest to us. So it's really important that, with our fundraising and us, we merge really well and closely on that, to have that information, so that we are really making that effort to personalize that.
Absolutely. I think, that's something that comes up all the time, because it's but people often do, right? If they're passionate about a cause, they both give their time and then they give their money. And I think if you keep them separate, that's where it can get a little bit of friction if you're asking. And also just understanding how much someone is contributing, because you don't want to be asking the people who are giving a lot of money and then their time for more all the time. And I think that you recognize them slightly differently as well. Any feedback on that from anyone in the audience? Don't be shy. Please let us know as well. Awesome. I would love to know answer to this question from everybody. What is something that you're doing because you always have, but you suspect that it may not be working? I think this is a really powerful one. I think, and this isn't even just for volunteer recognition, right? I think this is across systems that become historical, that you just do things because they've always been done that way. And it's about stripping back and saying, how can we do things differently? Like, is this actually impactful in any way? Could we be doing it smarter with a better outcome? I think that's a really important one. Anything that you can think of from your perspective, Sudha, across your career?
Oh yeah, no, there is plenty. And I think it's when you talked about trends and changing. And sometimes I think if we just keep on sending something like a card all the time, how do we know that that's effective and that it is making a difference? And the feedback is important there. So then that's a system. So it's making sure that we've got feedback, regular feedback with our volunteers. Yeah.
How do you currently source that feedback from volunteers about the volunteer recognition piece?
Yeah, we definitely have a system that we use, and not too much, because people are bombarded with a lot of surveys these days. So we're very careful on timing, but we will implement it at certain times after an event for event volunteers, for our regular volunteers, maybe at the beginning of the year before they come back. And then at updates, we seek feedback as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Within Rosterfy, we have a tool. It's a survey tool that we have that you can either create forms, post your feedback and add a little question in there about what's important to you in terms of recognition, or you can send them out, every couple of months as well, and then just feeding that all through to your reporting function and having everything centralized. Our organizations have found that really helpful too, and understanding, like, you don't want to be wasting time and money sending handwritten cards if people actually aren't opening them and they don't value them, when you could be doing something that's or emails as well, when you could be doing something that's maybe instead twice a year that feels a lot more impactful and a lot more personalized, like a summary of all the ways they've contributed and how much that means and what the impact is that they've had. Awesome. Cool. If anyone has any further contributions on that, please drop them in the questions or raise your hand. We'd love to hear as well. We'll continue for now, but we can loop back to that one, because I think that's a really great one we can all learn off each other. Awesome. So let's talk about, if my, here we go, it's a bit slow for me, some themes from strong recognition programs. And I think we find from my research that I did for this session that they often do at least one of the below exceptionally well. And one of the ones I wanted to mention today is actually Make-A-Wish globally. And we do actually Make-A-Wish New Zealand as a customer of Rosterfy, so I know them really well. But globally, the brand does this really well, where volunteers are recognized through the stories of the wishes that they grant. So there's a really huge emotional, personalized tie in here. The thank yous are tied to that very human impact. And these are sometimes even videos or messages directly from the families that they've helped. So it's very hyper personalized. You didn't just volunteer, but you actually changed this person's life. And that's where it's really connecting volunteers to meaning and not just activity in that way. But looking at all of these things, it's just, even if it's just one that you're sort of getting right at a time, there's the visibility element. People do love to be seen in some ways of doing good as well, and feeling like, that's something that they can share, which is where I think awards come through, and other things. Also tying it to identity for them, so making them feel like, through the use of badges or titles or leadership roles, that they're not someone that volunteers. Sometimes they're actually a volunteer. It's part of their identity. Connecting them to impact, so using real stories, beneficiaries, outcomes. This really mattered because this is what you contributed, this was the impact that you had. Creating aspiration, so something to work towards, whether it's exclusivity, national recognition, whether it's, once again, it kind of comes back to this badges and things around earning something and feeling like, wow, I've really been able to earn this certificate. I can pop it on my LinkedIn over 100 hours of volunteering, for example. And then I think a big thing about reward and recognition is making it consistent. I think a lot of, with being time poor and also resource poor, people tend to put on a morning tea once a year and say, come along, we'll recognize you. And actually, throughout the other 11 months of the year, you might have had someone drop off because for whatever reason they don't feel appreciated, or life has gotten busy and it hasn't been a priority for them. And so keeping up sort of the momentum of maybe recognizing people frequently, through just small personal touches, can be really, really impactful, that consistency. Anything to add there, Sudha?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on consistency. And if you have a system that is able to automate, badges or,
Definitely. Yeah.
milestones, all of that, that helps on that resource aspect, because we're
Yeah.
also looking at resource intensive. So we want to make things less resource intensive and still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. With Rosterfy, we have all of those automations. So as soon as somebody hits a certain number of hours, whatever everybody wants to, the admin team want to rules or they want to set, then people can start earning and they can jump into a centralized platform and see exactly what their impact is. So that's why tech can be really great for, empowering your team to be able to actually empower volunteers through data, which I think is a recurring theme that we're seeing definitely pop up around here. Awesome. Now, I'd love for any contributions here around what is one thing that you're going to try, change, or try this year. Anything here from you, Sudha?
Yeah. As I said, the team and I are always looking at something to change. And one of the things that we want to increase is those stories of impact, because we find they're really, really powerful. So we've already, beginning of the year, introduced some great video stories of volunteers that have volunteered with us at events. They've been very powerful in our recruitment, but they've also been very powerful for other people just to hear about the impact that that volunteer role made. So yeah, we're big on capturing stories at the moment.
Absolutely. And do you have any sort of solid plans locked in for June yet on what you're planning on doing with your volunteers on that week?
Yeah, we're already in planning mode. So we've got some, we're looking at stories again, obviously, but it's looking at different roles that engage with us and capturing the different aspects that they all bring to us. And also we have I'm going to put it out there, we'll start our Daffodil Day campaign for recruitment at that point. So our big story will be around, collectors and the impact that they make. to people going through cancer. Yeah.
I think having such an iconic fundraising event or volunteering event like Daffodil Day, that already makes people feel part of that community, right? Like people must get excited and everyone recognizes it. I remember driving down the street and seeing some of my friends on the corner, you know, for Daffodil Day. So it's just something that's, I think the Cancer Society's done so well, is creating events that people really want to be a part of, and they can say, I was supporting Daffodil Day. I think that's not everybody has the luxury of that at the moment, but I think it's something that's just, great that the Cancer Society has done. It's that whole community feel of wanting to be a part of something so special. We've had someone else come through saying, I like the idea of acknowledging the hours people volunteer and storytelling. And I think that's a really powerful one. I think previously in my volunteering experience, I haven't known how many hours I've contributed, and I've gone to the team to ask, like, across the year, how many hours? Whereas now I am aware of the total. And so I've been able to set myself, like, well, one of my New Year's resolutions is that I want to do at least 120 hours of volunteering this year. And so there's like a running total there for me as a volunteer to say, okay, every time I do a shift, I can see that go up, and it's quite motivating. And even though there's lots of other reasons that I volunteer, that's part of, I suppose, that stickiness of that keeps me going back and volunteering and prioritizing it, because I've got this goal for myself and it helps me to kind of keep on the track of achieving it. So I really, really think giving your volunteers the data of what their impact is truly, from my experience, one of the most powerful things that you can do in terms of volunteer recognition and just volunteer experience, really. Perfect. Okay, well, feel free to keep dropping them into the comments here. Anything else before we wrap up, sort of, that you wanted to chat about in terms of volunteer recognition for the year?
Yeah, I think you've just slightly touched on it here, Kelsey, and that's just empowering the volunteer. And so there's so many different demographics of volunteers that we have in our volunteer support, that, you know, it's making that journey for them really valid. So, you know, if I'm at a uni student, maybe this motivates me. If I'm more a retiree, something else motivates me. So it's bringing those motivations and bringing them together, because, if I'm competitive, I might really like the badges. If I want to belong to something, I want to be part of that cause, and that makes me happy. So really go into that.
And maybe that's part of the onboarding experience, is actually understanding what means, why are you here, and what's meaningful to you, and then having a system maybe that can support, because it is obviously admin intensive, that can support you with sort of not grouping those volunteers, but having an understanding and then matching them with recognition that feels really meaningful and really valuable, especially coming up to, you know, recognition weeks like we're approaching in June. So you can get a bit more granular and go, okay, well, these people, we're going to give a personalized phone call because they're in this age group and they've told us that that's what means the most to them. Or this group of people, we're going to send them an email telling them actually how many hours they've done and what this means. And maybe this people, we're going to give them a voucher that we've been given. So there's lots of different ways you can go about it. And I think getting that information from your volunteers as early as possible and then continuously checking in is really a clever way to do that. And that's what's going to then create that volunteer retention that we're all after as we're looking to grow our volunteer programs and our impact and support the causes that mean the most to us. Awesome. Well, we're heading into wrapping up now. So Sudha, I wanted to thank you so much for your time today. I've been really keen to get you on one of these webinars, and it's been so great to have you here, and thank you for working on this with me. It's obviously only been a very short session. We've only had 30 minutes, but I feel like it's been, you know, really great insights from you. So thank you so much for giving your time to the wider volunteering community. We so appreciate it, and I'll be looking forward to tuning in to see how Daffodil Day goes as well. But otherwise, for anyone that wants to contact me, that was my details up on here if you'd like to learn a little bit more about Rosterfy, or if you would like to, of course, join our next webinar and you have a story to tell, we'd love to hear from you too. But otherwise, we're right on the 1:30, so mā te wā, everybody. And thank you so much for sharing your lunch break with us. We hope you're all walking away with something valuable, and we are really keen to see you on our next session. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Kelsey, for having me.